Michael, you know how we start. We are live.
It's good to be back in the studio, Martin.
Super good to be back in the studio.
It's really great to be back in the studio in this amazing... Where are we again? Where's the studio?
True Digital Park.
Is this the most amazing place to record or not?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's super great. Like,
It's incredible.
I'm so happy to be back here, Michael.
It's amazing. And the support we get from the team here is insane. We got this great light.
Yeah, everything.
We have this amazing room.
Yep.
It's insane.
Super good.
I would not want to record anywhere else.
For sure.
So let's welcome everybody back to eCommerce Undercover.
Yeah.
How are you doing, man?
I'm doing super good, Michael. What about you?
I am awesome. I want to do something a little bit different today. I want to get to the e-commerce over time. But to get to what's happening on this particular e-commerce company, I think we need to talk about the region in which it's actually happening.
Sure.
And to do that, I think we actually need to have a little bit of background, a little bit of back and forth about Africa.
Sure. Let's do it, Michael. I think that's a very interesting topic to talk about what's happening in Africa.
I think it's super important too. And part of the reason why is that when I look back on where Southeast Asia was almost 11, let's call it 2011, 10 years ago, when I first started getting involved in the tech ecosystem and the startup ecosystem and the venture capital ecosystem in Southeast Asia, it was very immature.
Okay.
Very, very immature. As a matter of fact, it was so immature that most of the birth of a company called eCommerce was meant to address the immaturity. This year, they're probably going to IPO, or the beginning of next year is going to IPO. So you can see how much the ecosystem has changed. And back then, if you were running an e-commerce company, not just in Thailand, but in the rest of Southeast Asia, and frankly, even in Singapore, generally your office was your warehouse. I'm not kidding. And the reason to start these e-commerce facilitation companies was born out of the idea that if you wanted to scale above basically $500,000 in sales, you had to have a proper warehouse. You had to have a proper back end. You had to have a proper ERP system, right? And to do warehouse management and enterprise resource planning, you needed scale. And that was the birth of the beginning of the real e-commerce business. And that's why companies like Lazada got born in 2012, I believe it was, 2013. And now if you fast forward 10 or 11 years later, you have a company like Shopee, which literally came out of nowhere. Sure, it was built by SEA, which is a big company. But I mean, just the pure gall of launching a company against Lazada, bought by Alibaba, all those resources, was really gutsy. Big move, really big move. And I saw something published a couple of days ago. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head the details. But apparently, Shopee is now growing faster and getting bigger faster than Lazada.
With Alibaba support.
With Alibaba's support.
Which is interesting.
So that's a really big deal, I think.
Completely agree with you.
Completely. It's really... So, but it's in this context that I want to talk about Africa. And the reason why is because when I look at the African ecosystem, you know, again, if I used to ask people about how many people lived in Southeast Asia, they would say, I don't know. They couldn't even name all the countries. How many people, so 670 million people is the number we like to use for Southeast Asia. How many people live in Africa?
I think it's like 1.2 billion.
1.2 billion people. Now, Africa is as diverse, if not more diverse than Southeast Asia. Do you know how many countries there are in Africa?
No idea.
No idea though, right? No idea. And neither did I before I looked it up. And I have this vision of like, you know, maybe 16 countries or 17 countries, most of which I've never heard of. We're going to start hearing about them. There are over 50 countries in Africa. And let's talk a little bit about the ecosystem there, right? So I have some notes here. Africa has the youngest and second largest population in the world. Just think about that.
The youngest, that's very interesting.
You don't even know. I had a slide and I can't find it now, but I'll find the slide. I think the median age of the world, I believe, is somewhere in the 40s.
Oh, really? Interesting, okay.
The median age in Africa, and I'm guessing a little bit, right? Because I had this written down a couple of days ago and I just forgot it. But the median age, if you consider that that is the age where there are as many people below that age as there are above that age, I believe in Africa is 19.9, so almost 20 years old. So almost half the world's age, I believe. We can look that up, and we can confirm that in the show notes. But this is a young population.
Super young, actually, yeah. For sure.
I mean, that's ridiculously young, right?
Ridiculously
Which
young.
means that the potential growth there is insane.
Completely insane.
Now, internet penetration in Africa is also high and growing. Okay, Kenya, and this is mostly, I believe, due to a company called M-Pesa, and we can talk about what M-Pesa is in a second. Kenya had an internet penetration of approximately 85, 86%. That's high. But that's only like the top 2 or 3 countries in Africa are close to that. And we'll get to some of those other statistics in a second. M-Pesa was a company started by one of the telcos. And basically what it was meant to address was just the lack of banking services. And since everybody in Africa, just like in Southeast Asia, was mobile first, they built this mobile banking system with Safari Unicom, I think was the name of the company. I can't remember. Anyway, and the growth of that, now because people can make payments, digital payments, now a whole bunch of other things in the ecosystem can fall into place. What's the largest country in Africa? Do you know by population?
I know this one because I also looked it up.
Also looked it up. Yeah. Go ahead.
It's Nigeria, right?
Okay, but Nigeria it has around 200 million people. It could be 195. It could be 208. I don't know the exact number because I don't think anybody knows the exact number of, frankly, any country. But it has just a tad bit more than 90% of its population has a mobile phone.
Which is insane.
But if you think about it, and again, it goes back to 10 years ago when I used to say I'm living in Thailand, people say, why did you choose to live in Taiwan kind of thing, right?
Seriously?
Because they just don't know. Seriously. Even today, if you ask a Thai student if they go overseas and like study in Michigan or study in Chicago, well, Chicago has a decent Thai population. But if they go to Michigan or Minnesota or like Wyoming or somewhere and they say, I'm from Thailand, they say, oh, great. I love Taiwanese food kind of thing, right? But I think people have just as much information about Africa today as they had about Thailand 10 years ago.
Interesting.
No?
Actually, like for me, I grew up in France, and we have a lot of people who come from Africa and who live in France, and some of them like have still their parents who are living in Africa, and the children are just come here in France for studying, for example.
Yep.
So I met a lot of people from Africa in my life, basically, before I moved to Dubai, and also in Dubai, there's a lot of people who are from Africa. Way less here in Thailand, that's true. But yeah, like when you're in France, it's hard not to meet people from Africa, and it's hard not to go to school with people from Africa.
That's true.
Or stuff like that, right? So I've been hearing about Africa and the potential growth of Africa since a long time ago.
Yeah, fair enough.
On my side.
Yeah, but I mean, of course, Europeans in almost all cases are way more cosmopolitan than Americans. But also remember, in the old days, France had some colonies or some countries.
Of course, yeah.
In Africa. So a lot of the Africans that actually come to France can speak French.
Can speak French, definitely.
Yeah, because they were educated in French.
Definitely. And there's a lot, yeah.
In their country.
And there's a lot also who really love the French culture, who really support the French culture, and who like keep growing, let's say, home with the French culture and with what they had before with the French
Absolutely.
country.
Yeah, and for them to integrate into just like if they're from an African country that's a French-speaking country, to come to France to them is like being at home. It's like no different.
Very easy, yeah.
And nobody in France cares. Like it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit more about the stats. And I want to use Nigeria as like a proxy, again, because it's the biggest country, but it's not completely indicative of the whole continent. And we'll talk about how different it can be later. 50% of the population of Nigeria, only 50, are connected to the internet.
But 90% has a mobile phone.
Has a mobile phone.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're saying internet users. So they may have a connection to it, but they're just not using it, right? That's amazing. And only 15.8% of the population uses social media, and thank God for that.
That's made me think about, I think, something that we talked about the show maybe like a few episodes ago, when we said that people in Thailand doesn't really know how it works and what powers Google and Facebook and all of that kind of stuff. So if you ask people in Thailand, do you use the internet? No. But do you use Google? Yes, of course. You use Facebook?
What's your problem?
Of course. And just like, so maybe that's the same point there, right? Like maybe they have a phone that is connected to the internet, but they don't really know what's going on and how it works.
I think it's different, and I'll tell you why. Because only 13% of the population, or 30, what was the number that I gave you?
50%.
No, that use the internet. 1 second. 15.8% use the internet.
Okay.
And only 30% use social media. No, 15.8% use social media.
Okay.
So that alone just tells you, because social media is most of your internet usage time, right? If you're not doing commerce, and we'll get to commerce in a second.
Great.
But the other thing I want to talk about is this, is that as a share of global internet usage, this is where it gets really interesting. And I want to talk a little bit about the African continent as a very different place depending on where you are in Africa, right? Right? Like everybody's heard of the country South Africa, but they don't think about Southern Africa. So of the share of global internet users, Africa as a whole, 7, 8, 10, 11, almost 12%.
Okay.
It's third after Eastern Asia, which obviously includes China, which is 24.4%, and Southern Asia, which includes India, which is 17.7%. And third in the world is Africa, which is, like, I'm doing the math in my head, 2, 5, 8, 10, almost 11 or 12%.
Okay.
But it's really split up interestingly, if you look at the stats from country to country or from region to region inside of Africa. Like Northern Africa is like a completely different place than Western Africa. Middle Africa, only 1% of the world's internet population is there. And between Northern Africa and Western Africa, it's like almost 7%.
Okay. So it's very different.
It's just really, really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's very interesting to see all of these difference. Just like, but like for example, if we take like the Northern Africa, that's country like Morocco, Algeria, and all that kind of country, right, who have access to the Mediterranean Sea, and we've been connected to Europe like since a lot of time, right? And,
Right.
France in particular, right?
Yep.
France was there for a while, and they've been trading. They've been like a lot of immigrants from this country, and as I said before, there's a lot of people who go back to see their family, to send money to their family there.
Yep.
So maybe it helps as well into the development of the country.
So I want to go back to these stats. I agree with you.
Okay.
I want to go back to these stats. But while you were saying that, I was doing exactly what I was doing before we started recording, which was ignoring you. Because I'm just kidding. But because I wanted to make sure that I had these statistics right, because I think it's important that people know this. I talked about the median age, right? Mm-hmm. So I found the numbers. In Kenya, the median age is 20.3.
Okay.
But this one will blow you away. And this is why I was thinking 19. In Nigeria, it's 18.1. Years old.
With 200 million people.
But that's the median age. That's according to the United Nations. That's not according to Michael Waitze Media. Okay?
I hope so. Otherwise, it would be hard to believe.
Hard to believe the statistics coming out of Michael Waitze Media for sure. But just for comparison, so I gave the global before, but just for comparison, the median age in Indonesia, which we think of as a very young country, is 29.9.
So it's like 10 years older.
Than Nigeria.
And how many people live in
270 million people, so close enough. I mean, the difference, it's not like one is 45 and one is 270. It's basically 208 or 209 and 270, so it's essentially the same size, right, or close enough, right? It's at least relatable. And in Thailand, it's 40.3.
40.3, really?
Yeah, it's the median age in Thailand.
The median age in Thailand? That's really, really different.
And if you think about the people that we know, it's pretty close to that age.
We have a lot of fun with this episode, Michael, talking about statistics.
I knew you'd like that. Anyway, and the median age in Singapore, I didn't say anything, is 42.5.
42.5, okay.
So more than double what it is in Nigeria and Kenya.
But I'm very impressed by the huge population with such a small median age. That's really impressed me.
Right. So unless the United Nations is fudging the data, which I don't think they are, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's really, really impressive. Yeah.
Right. Really amazing. And what it means is that as they grow into internet usage, think about all the services that we take for granted in Southeast Asia, not to mention in France, the rest of Europe, and in North America. You can see a pathway to a whole bunch of really interesting services getting built there. And we'll get to e-commerce as well. And all of it's going to be on mobile somehow, right?
For sure. Like, actually, like right now, we can see that in Thailand. Like many people doesn't have a computer, but they have a mobile phone, which makes e-commerce completely different into Thailand, right?
Completely.
Like, for example, like I can see that with my own company, with DrTech. Like, if I want to expand into France, I know exactly what the people want to do and how they operate e-commerce. But when it comes to Thailand, it's a complete other story. It's really, really different because people doesn't use a computer, which means they cannot build their own websites. Which means like they use Shopee and Lazada, marketplaces, and done. Or they use social media to do e-commerce because they are mobile first and they don't use the computer, they don't use the tablet, they don't use all of that. And it makes e-commerce very, very different in the end.
Yeah, and look, I told you, I was once booking flights with a friend of mine, and we weren't in the same place. They were literally on their phone.
Okay.
And this was like an iPhone SE, so it's a small phone. And I'm on my laptop. So I'm just like cruising through, going fast, clicking on stuff. And they're like, just give me one more second. I need to, just give me another second. Do you know what I mean? So the experience was completely different on mobile than it is on a laptop or a desktop. Same thing, right?
For sure.
But what that means for Africa, I think is really interesting. And get this. Only 2 countries in Africa make the list of the top 43 countries, and I can put a link to where this data is all coming from, right? In the world, and in a minute we're going to start talking about e-commerce, I think, in which internet users age 16 to 64, so basically everybody, bought something online, and I'm going to put in quotes, in the last month. So the team that did this research basically asked people globally, have you bought anything online in the last month? And out of the top 43 countries, and I don't know why they used 43, maybe that's where it was like below 50%, I think. I can't remember. Only 2 of those countries were in Africa. Okay. And the top 2 will surprise you. What do you think they are?
You mean top 2 African countries or top 2 globally?
Top 2 globally we'll get to in a second. So what do you think the top 2 in Africa were?
Oh, top 2 in Africa, I would say Nigeria.
Go ahead.
And maybe some of the northern country like Morocco, let's say.
No, but good guess. South Africa.
Okay, South Africa, yeah.
57.7% of the people surveyed said that they had purchased something online in the last month. And Egypt, 56.6%. Yeah, I mean, Egypt, again, not a poor country, right?
Oh, definitely not. And it's especially with a connection with the Middle East. Like,
correct.
They're doing a lot of stuff into this part of the world as well.
Right, like a lot of people don't think of Egypt as an African country. Yeah. But it's right there in northeastern Africa. And just like Libya, and we'll talk about Libya in a second, I mean, in a bit as well. But I thought that was just fascinating. And again, for comparison, the top 2 countries, in the list were Indonesia, where 87.1% said they'd bought something in the last month, and the UK.
And the UK, really? Okay.
Again, according to these statistics, at 85.5% for any device, whether it was mobile or laptop or whatever, right? And the percentages were lower for the African countries, for the only ones that were like on mobile, but basically the same 2 countries did it.
Okay.
Just so amazing.
That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, it's so amazing, right?
Which means there's a lot of growth to happen there.
Just so much growth. Because if they just think about it, if 30% more of the people start buying online,
that's like huge.
It's just a gigantic number of people.
Yeah.
Right? And we talked already about the biggest population. I mean, the population in Africa is 1.2 billion people, right? Nigeria is, I want to get this right. Let me just check my statistics here because I think this is super interesting. 1 second.
No problem, Michael. Take your time.
Because I want to get the population numbers right.
Sure. That's very important.
So Nigeria is the biggest country. Then it's Ethiopia, Egypt, the Congo, South Africa, Tanzania, and Kenya. Okay. But from a GDP per capita standpoint, Nigeria is the 18th highest GDP per capita at $2,200, $2,210.
Okay.
So it's one of the biggest countries.
But it was
very small GDP per capita.
Yeah.
And Kenya, which is again another super large country, is 20th.
Yeah.
So, and we know, because we've talked about it across the platform, that we know that GDP per capita is a trigger point for a whole bunch of online services, right? Including e-commerce, right? And the tipping point is around $3,500 per capita GDP. Okay. That's when they start really getting into banking. That's when they start really getting into insurance. And that's when they start having sort of disposable income, which is why they get insurance and why they get banking, because they now want to protect their assets. And if you have enough money to protect, then you have enough money to do what?
Yeah, e-commerce.
Buy stuff.
For example.
To buy stuff, right?
Yeah, true. Interesting.
So can you see now why I kind of feel like I just wanted to set the stage. We have some more stats as well. But I want to start talking about the e-commerce business there, and maybe a little bit about venture capital too, because I don't think you can build all these e-commerce companies without a little bit of VC money. And the VC business in in Africa is exploding.
Yeah, I think you sent me the article before the recording.
Yeah,
and yeah, definitely look at that, and we could see like the total amount of money invested by VC into African companies and startups, including startups who are really growing the last few years, let's say. But it was still super small compared to like other regions in the world.
Oh my God! In the United States, it's like got to be almost $1 trillion. I have no idea what it is, but it's like an uncountable number.
It's like huge.
And in Africa, what was it? $1.4 billion. But more importantly, the deals have doubled it like in the last like 6 or 7 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
The numbers growing. The number of deals is growing as well.
Yeah. And I mean, Africa has an equivalent size population to India. Right. And younger Africans, again, just like in the rest of the world, are better educated than their parents. And here's the other thing you may or may not know. Do you know what this term diaspora means? So it's when like a local native population, people from Nigeria go abroad.
And gather together there.
They gather together. That's the diaspora, right?
Okay.
And every country has this. There's a French diaspora in Thailand. Like there are these diasporas, right?
Yeah.
But the African diasporas, you know what they're starting to do?
No.
Come home.
Okay.
They're coming back from London or the UK. They're coming back from France. They're coming back from Europe. They're coming back from Minnesota and Michigan, where they go to the United States to study, coming back from Boston and building venture capital companies and building ventures back in Africa.
That's very interesting because it made me think about the story of Dubai, basically. Like, because Dubai, like we talk about Dubai once again, but Dubai 50 years ago was not what it is right now, right? It was really far from what it is right now. And in the last 20 years, Dubai grew so much, right? When you see a picture of Dubai in 2020 and actually there, a picture of Dubai in 2000 and now.
Oh my God, it's like a completely different world.
Completely different world, right?
There's just the Toyota building is there. There's this really famous picture of just like a Toyota building. It's like 11 stories high.
It's completely changed.
And then it's like the Burj Khalifa. Anyway, go ahead.
And actually, so what they did for this growth is that the kids of the people in charge in Dubai were to study into UK university, into US university. They've been to study into this biggest university in the world. They go there to learn business, to learn funding, to learn military, to learn like so many things.
Everything.
And then they went back to Dubai and applied what they learned
best
into
practices.
This country. And then they really blew up everything there.
Yeah, I mean, great countries do this. Really organized countries do this. They're like, we're sending you abroad.
Yeah.
Your job, your mission.
Learn everything.
If you accept it.
Yeah.
What is the thing from Mission Impossible? Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to go over and get knowledge and understand best practices and to bring them home.
Yeah.
And the same thing is happening now in the biggest countries and even some of the smaller countries in Africa. I wanted to do a little bit more. If I asked you where the biggest GDP per capita, I think this is really interesting actually. The largest GDP per capita in Africa, you'll never know. I'll give you one guess.
Seychelles. I know I would surprise you. I would say Seychelles is number first and Mauritius is number 2.
Oh my God, you're brilliant.
Well, I think I know why.
But why though? Is it tourism?
No, not tourism.
What
I
is
think
it?
It's offshore companies.
Offshore companies, yeah.
So many people who have a lot of money who just go there. And actually, there's so many French guys that I know who make a lot of money, for example, doing online courses or online businesses or doing e-commerce that then move to this country because the weather is nice and there's no tax and all of that kind of stuff. And this country are very small, Seychelles and Mauritius. So if you get a lot of people with a lot of money who just put their company there and spend their money there, of course, I think it, in the end of the day, increases GDP per capita.
Fair enough. But let's go a little bit further down the list, like Equatorial Guinea, Botswana, South Africa. I was surprised actually that South Africa was not at the top.
Yeah.
You know, if you think about all the diamonds and all the other stuff that's going on there. And there are some other countries, and maybe the GDP per capita is not, is not the best measure. But there are some Central African countries that are super rich in natural resources, right? And it wouldn't surprise me, actually, if they found some oil there. But I just thought that was really interesting. So the countries that nobody's ever heard of, maybe, again, Europeans have, but Americans surely have not. Since most of them don't have passports anyway. So I just thought that was interesting. So I wanted to point that out too.
Yeah.
And let's look at a few more stats on the venture capital side, again, just to give scale. In 2015, when a company called Disrupt Africa and Partech started tracking these numbers, they estimated somewhere between, let's call it $200 and $275 million of investment went into VC. Okay. And in the same year, Snapchat raised $500 million.
This is really funny, right?
It feels a bit unfair.
When you take like the whole Africa, 1.2 billion people,
right?
And you take the whole VC money invested into that, this company, this startup, and all of the innovation that should happen there,
right?
It's half only what Snapchat got
in the same year.
In the same year.
Let me ask you this: do you use Snapchat?
I used to use Snapchat before.
When you were a little kid, yeah.
When I was a little kid, yeah.
Yeah.
So
now that you're an adult, a full-fledged adult, you're not using it anymore.
I don't use that anymore.
Let the kids use it. I couldn't even figure out the interface.
Of course, it's easy for you, Michael.
Easy. But in 2019, 234 companies were funded at a little bit over $2 billion. So numbers are growing. They're growing fast, and I think they're just going to continue to grow.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. But you know, like, every time when it comes to Africa, I'm always a bit skeptical. Like, I understand the statistic. I see that there is potential, and it kind of makes sense that the continent and every country within it might grow because, like, of course, they are underdeveloped compared to Europe or compared to America, and also compared to Southeast Asia. So, of course, like, there is growth that can happen there. But once again, it's been 15 years that I'm hearing that Africa is like going to grow and there's so much opportunity there and blah, blah, blah. Because I was in France, and once again, I had friends and connections and friends of the family who were from African countries and who were sending money home or going back home and stuff like that, right? And in the last 10 or 15 years, I didn't see any huge improvements into what happened there. So that's why, like, I'm always a bit skeptical about talking about Africa as the huge opportunity or the opportunity of tomorrow, for example.
Right. So let me push back on that, and I'll tell you why.
Sure.
I think progress, like bankruptcy, can be described as happening really slowly at first and then really fast. Right. So people go bankrupt like this, and then they just go bankrupt. And I think that the progress in Africa you're going to see is just like the progress in Southeast Asia.
Very small.
It took 10 years to get to a point where real companies really built in this region that were real startups, right? Like eCommerce. It took 10 years for them to start IPOing.
Yeah.
It just takes time. And we were talking about, if you look at the investment decks that we built just for Ardent Capital and for some Ardent Capital portfolio companies back in 2012, I'm guessing, very aspirational about growth and about how Indonesia was the next big thing. But again, think about it. Now in Indonesia, Tokopedia IPO'd. You have Gojek is a multi-billion-dollar company. You have Bukalapak is also a gigantic company, but it takes years to get there.
Yeah, of course. Not happen overnight. That's for sure.
Anyway, and I do believe very strongly that the same thing is going to happen in Africa, that we'll look back on this in 5 years or 7 years.
For sure.
And just say, I told you so.
So if we did that the 5 years, like, until now, I would win. But okay, let's check for the next 5 years.
We did, but you and I were not talking about this 5 years ago.
Of course.
Because we were talking about what was going on in Southeast Asia. And I was thinking about this all morning.
Yeah.
Right, when I was walking back and forth, like picking up the equipment and stuff, I was thinking about this all morning. We had the same skepticism. I told you this. We talked to venture capitalists in Silicon Valley about investing in eCommerce, but also investing in other companies out here. And one of the things they told us was we don't have enough visibility on what's happening in Southeast Asia. They're just not close to it. They don't have any boots on the ground here. And the information flow for them was filled with skepticism because they'd been hearing the same stories: Indonesia, 270 million people, Southeast Asia, blah, blah, blah. They just kept hearing it.
But at the end of the day, it happened.
But at the end of the day, it's going to, you cannot stop the forward march of progress.
And if it doesn't come from Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, it might come from Thai entrepreneurs or Indonesian entrepreneurs. So like they are going to do it themselves. They have access to money, they have access to funds, they have access to technology. So if nobody built the Amazon of Thailand, then fine, Shopee happen, Lazada happen, and done, right?
Exactly. And I wanna bring up something too. Just give me a second to get this little piece of information, because this woman actually worked really, really, really hard. I said really a bunch of times to give myself more time to find this thing.
Imagine, I think everybody understood the trade.
Oh, I don't think anybody's under any. I think everybody's already figured it out. But there's a woman named Maya Horgan Famadou. Okay. I think raised in the United States. I forget exactly where she went to school, but I'm looking at that now as well. She went to Claremont colleges, and it took her years. And she worked in private equity. I think she also worked in investment banking in the United States. And if you listen to her talk, complete American accent, complete. She started something called Ingressive Capital. First fund small, second fund $50 million, keeps building, keeps investing. And part of the diaspora, I believe. I don't remember which country her family's from. But the point is that there are women like this that are going out and raising real funds the same way Golden Gate Ventures, Monks Hill, Jungle Ventures did this 10 or 11 years ago in Southeast Asia. And everybody thought, where are you going to get the deal flow from? What are you going to invest in? And yet here they are.
Did they invest into like foreign companies that came into Southeast Asia, or did they invest into Southeast Asian companies?
Those companies, those VCs were very specific about investing in the best companies built in Southeast Asia.
Okay, so Southeast Asian entrepreneurs, people from here building for here, basically.
Yeah, now let's be fair. There were some foreigners that were living in the region that said, you know, a light went off and said, okay, there's e-commerce going on in America or in Europe. How come there's none of it here? Sorry, and that was like the genesis of a company called Redmart.
Okay.
It was also, Luxola was started by an American woman, bought by Sephora, which is an LVMH company, I believe.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard of LVMH. Small company out of France.
Very small.
Very small.
Very,
don't do
very
much.
Small. Very small, yeah. And the founder is not so rich.
Not so rich, really.
He's not really like on the Forbes top
No,
you know,
top three, maybe.
Top three, yeah.
No, not that guy.
Not that guy. Not Mr. Arno.
No, not Mr. Arno. Or anyone in his family. So those guys bought Luxola through Sephora, right? Anyway, all that was happening. And now the same cycle is going to happen in Africa. It's going to happen differently too. And this is the great thing about it, is that you cannot just cut and paste even what happened in Southeast Asia into Africa. You really have to have African founders or people that have been living in Africa. So they're the founder of Milvik. I want to make sure I have that right as well.
Because, yeah, you want to understand the market, you want to understand the people, you want to understand the culture and the how-to of this country and stuff like that. Yeah, sure.
So the founder of Milvik, which is an African-focused insurtech company focused on health and health insurance, was started by a Swede. But he moved to Africa for another company, lived in Africa for a while, looked around and said, I'm staying here and I'm building this for this. Okay, so it doesn't have to be locals, but it has to be built by people that are local.
That made me think about what Internet did the last 10 years. They were building like replica of very successful businesses in Southeast Asia, like with Lazada, for example, in Europe, but also in South America. Yeah. But they never did anything in Africa, I think.
They did a couple of things, but not with the same level of success.
Okay, so they tried also Africa, right?
They did, but I don't think they tried as hard as they did in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I don't know that for sure, but I don't remember them building gigantic ventures there. We know they built Lazada. We know they built Zalora. They tried to bring Grab Taxi from Brazil to here as well, which is another rocket internet company. Food Panda. Back when people were naming their companies after pandas. I don't understand.
But for the Asian market, that's cute, that's funny, so perfect.
I still don't understand. We go through this all the time. Food Panda, Service Hero. Why is everybody a hero or a panda? I don't get it. Or a ninja. Ninja van is right downstairs. I just don't understand. Anyway, now that we've set the stage, and I think that people now have a better understanding about, at least a little bit of an understanding about the context of Africa, let's talk about Alerzo.
Yeah. So I think there was one thing that really grabbed my attention.
Tell me.
Let's say it's that they said that they have an office in Singapore. Why? Because they want to identify what worked in Southeast Asia and in India to adapt it to the African market and to Nigeria to be more accurate. And my first question was, why? Why Southeast Asia? Why not Europe? Why not the US? But now that we just had this 30-minute conversation about the last 10 years of growth in Southeast Asia, I understand much better why they want to come here and analyze, study what's happening here to then replicate that.
So what are some of those things? Should we talk about what those things are?
Sure.
Okay. So if you go to the United States and try to study Amazon, and we go through this all the time. So let's just say if we're only an American company, which it's not, but that's where it had its initial growth, where it learned all the things that it knows and does today, right? 48 contiguous states, everybody speaks English, most of the laws are the same. There's a free you can go from California, drive through Nevada, drive all the way to Connecticut, and nobody stops you. And if your car breaks down, everything is the same. The electricity system's the same. The money's the same. The language is the same. We can argue about IQs in different parts of America, but fair enough. Let's not get into that, into the political side of this. But it's so much easier because it's this massive landmass of a bunch of the same people, basically, that basically live under the same regime and the same laws. But in Southeast Asia, there are and in India in particular, there are parts of India that are completely different than the state right next door. Right? I don't know how many languages there are in India, but when I speak to my friends that are in India or from India, they'll say, I speak English, I speak Hindi, I speak my mother's local language and my father's local language. Right?
Yeah.
So it's just so much harder there. And also because the logistics are not as well developed or refined as they are in the United States or in Japan, you have to study the logistics side of this too. And then all the back end stuff we talked about. The payment systems in Indonesia were probably similar or at a similar stage 10 years ago that digital payments are in Africa today, or maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. So by going to Singapore and being in Southeast Asia and by studying this ecosystem, it makes perfect sense.
Completely.
To me.
Now I understand much better now. Now I understand much better why they want to come here, because definitely the market is more closer to what's the current stage they have right now in Africa, for sure.
Don't you think?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. But I think thanks to your 10 years experience in Southeast Asia, I think it's easier for you to see that. And I think that's very interesting that you've been here for the 10 years and you saw that the investment and all that kind of stuff. And now I feel like you can see that the same thing happen in Africa, right?
Absolutely.
So that's why it gets you so excited.
You can feel it, though.
I can feel it for sure.
We used to say back in 2011 and 2012, we kind of used to joke about ourselves and say, we can predict the future.
Okay.
We can see it, almost like we were soothsayers. Because we would look at the development of what happened in the United States, and in some cases and in Europe, and say we knew the similar things were going to happen here. And we were right. Now, picking the winners and the losers is hard.
Of course, you don't know.
Right, because there were plenty of companies that started here before Lazada that could not grow as fast because they didn't have the rocket internet money, right? And even Tarot.com was one of the earliest online sellers here. It never got as big. It's a great company, and the guy who ran it was great for the ecosystem, right? But again, didn't get super big. So being first doesn't always mean winning, but we could see it. And when the right team got put together to take advantage of those opportunities,
then it was up.
Explosive growth.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to see the same types of things here. So now after watching this ecosystem grow for the past 10 years, we can look at Africa and just see, remember, it's very diverse. Mm-hmm. It's fragmented because it's 50-something countries, mm-hmm. different languages, different customs, even inside some of the countries, same thing. It's going to be really hard. Mm-hmm. But there are companies like Alerzo, which, according to the press, is a B2B e-commerce startup based in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And they just raised, again, it reminds me a little bit of eCommerce. When eCommerce raised its $3.7 million bridge round into a $10.7 million Series A round, that was the largest Series A round in Southeast Asian history at the time.
Okay.
$10.7 million? Wow. It just felt so huge. It just felt so huge. And that's what these guys just raised. Mm-hmm. $10.5 million. But here's what's really interesting about it. And I want to talk about the business and what they do in a second. The round was led by a London-based company, some family offices in the US, Europe, and Asia. That's really interesting to me.
Why?
Because they know, now they know.
Now you mean they pay really attention?
I think that the smart money is now saying, where's the last frontier? Mm-hmm. Right? We used to think, let's be honest, Africa has been ignored and neglected by the global community for generations. Mm-hmm. But it's really the last frontier. Because South America is already working on it, Central America a little bit, North America is done, not done, but we know about it. Mm-hmm. Europe, even Central Europe and Eastern Europe, plenty of people building stuff there. Where is it? Estonia has digital citizenship.
That was, I think, the first country in the world to do that.
Yeah, what the fondue though? It's interesting that it's in Estonia, which is a country of 1 million people.
Super small, yeah, it's super small. But once again, if that was for being attractive to people who are making money and who don't want to pay too much tax. So now you can go to Estonia, get a digital citizenship. You still need to go there for 6 months, Michael, and
I'm just going to go during the 6 months where I can swim there.
Well, even in the summer, Estonia is still super cold.
I know. Well, because it's so close to, where is it? Norway.
I don't know if it's that close, but
Thailand is very close to Helsinki. It's across whatever that strait is. I'm looking at it on.
Oh, okay. You have the map.
Yeah, I'm not making this up off the top of my head. Haven't you figured this out yet?
That's why you always sound so smart. You check the.
I'm smart at looking stuff up.
That's right.
So I used to say that the internet ruined what I used to call the bar argument. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You'd be like, oh no, that Steve Miller Band album came out in 1975. And some dude would be like, 1974. Be like, just give me 1 second. No, it's 1973. Yeah. Solved. No fights. No bets. Not coming back next week to figure it out.
No fun.
all the answers at your fingertips. Okay, so why does this matter? This company, Alerzo, has raised now $20 million, I believe, since its launch. And it's been invested in by, its earlier rounds were invested in by some African accelerators and stuff. But here's why it's interesting. I like to look for equivalencies. I had a guy who who's one of the founders of a company called Bukukas in Indonesia on, I think it was the Asia Tech podcast, a few weeks ago. Lorenzo Parecchione, so an Italian guy. I hope I got his name right.
Probably not, Michael.
Probably not. And I'm not going to look it up. But their whole business model is giving tools to small and medium-sized enterprises at the beginning, some of which are free, to help warungs, which are like mom and pop shops, and small and medium-sized enterprises, not micro-enterprises, but sure. And in Indonesia, and again, let me check my stats because this is really interesting too, 60% of GDP in Indonesia is run by SMEs. Okay.
That's pretty big.
It's huge. So, and because they can now have tools to manage their finances, to understand all that stuff, what they're going to do, because it's also going to offer them financial services and banking services and stuff like that. Because once you're there and helping them manage their money, or at least just keep track of the inflow and the outflows. So they gave away a bookkeeping thing to people. Mm-hmm. So now they have their money. Mm-hmm. And once you do that, then you can offer services to them. So they're trying to digitally transform the SMEs in Indonesia. And that's what Alerzo is trying to do. And if they went to Singapore and the rest of Southeast Asia to
Yeah.
study it,
Yeah.
right?
That's very interesting, right?
But that's what I mean when I say, and again, I don't know who's going to win, and I don't know who their competition is, but they've been at this since what, 2000 and when, 15? I can't remember exactly when this company was founded. Doesn't matter. Sorry about that, Mark. In 2018, so really recently.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see what's going to happen here. Can't you?
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with you. And like to go back to some stats about Alerzo, they got right now, they say that they got more than 100,000 businesses that they support in 3 years. That's a huge growth. That's pretty fast. And I think something that they did very, very well and that confirmed that there is a need and there is growth for either them but also like for the competition and for the global market is that first they have 100,000 like businesses that they work with in 3 years, which is huge. But also 90% of that is led by women.
Okay, so this is, go ahead.
So it's like super niche, let's say. Like I don't know, like maybe 90% of the businesses in Nigeria are led by women, so like it would make sense, but I bet not. So like they really figure out an issue, a problem, and they really just addressed that. But the market is it's pretty big. That's new, and I think that really confirmed that there is opportunity for them into this market for future growth.
Right. And let's go back to, remember we talked about at the beginning of growth in Southeast Asia. Mm-hmm. And then we can talk more. I'm going to talk about Alerzo in this context. Remember I said that eCommerce was founded because the entrepreneurs back then had their warehouses as like their condos or as their office was their warehouse. Mm-hmm. And it's impossible to scale if it's not automated a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like it's just like, where are the green shoes? They're over there somewhere, kind of thing, right?
Michael, can you give me the
can you get that thing? No, the other one is the warehousing system that they had, right?
Yeah.
And apparently, this company was also started to help the sellers stock their inventory and manage the last mile delivery.
Interesting.
So it's exactly the same.
The same thing. Yeah, they are doing the same thing. And this is interesting because this company, they say that they want to help these women who have businesses and who normally, they go like to get the supply for their store. They normally go to the market or they normally go to another city and then they get to carry all of their stuff. Like there was no solution for them, like to get the supply for their store, deliver to them, basically, and to help them carry everything and stuff like that. So these guys solve this problem of logistics between the warehouses, the big companies, to these little shops, to these little like these smaller businesses, and then like it helped them a lot.
Right. And one of the things you said earlier, you said, and you went a different way than I expected, but I want to go back to the conversation and to the terminology you used and go that different way.
Tell me.
I'm very skeptical about the numbers that we see coming out of Africa. Very. And part of the reason why is I think they're too low.
Okay.
I really do. Because I think that the informal economy, I don't want to call it underground because I don't think anybody's trying to hide anything. I just don't think there have been good ways to gather the statistics. Mm-hmm. But I think the informal economy is way bigger. We know this is true or has been true statistically in the Philippines, right? Yeah. Where the informal economy has probably been as big as the formal economy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I think that in Africa, well, let's just talk about Nigeria because that's where this company is based. The problem one of the problems that they're trying to solve is taking this informal economy and formalize it. Mm-hmm. And again, not for any nefarious reasons, but because it'll be so much more efficient. And I don't think anybody that's participating, actually, let me fix that. I'm not convinced that the majority of people that are participating in the informal economy want to participate in the informal economy. Because if your business is informal, then you don't have access to what?
Like capital, banking,
capital,
payments,
you can't grow.
Yeah, it's hard.
So again, you're capped. Mm-hmm. So what a company like this is doing, and I love the name, I'm not going to mispronounce the first name, Aduel Opalai. It just sounds like sounds like a hero out of a movie. It's just such a great name, right? The whole point is he watched his mother and he watched his family members try to build these businesses, and they capped out. Mm-hmm. And he looked around and said, "How can I fix this?"
Yeah.
And then went around and started doing it. Go ahead.
And this is like, I think, the beginning of every great idea, right? Something that your close friend or your family like a problem that they have and a problem that you want to fix, and that as it's your mom, you have a big incentive to fix it, right? Because you want to help your mom, you love your mom, you don't want to see your mom like keep struggling, right?
Right.
So then the idea, if you can have that, and if you have the possibility to operate the idea, then for me it becomes a good idea, right? Because at least you help your mom, and then your mom can be a case study, let's say. And the first customer, very simple, because mom always gets the first customer of every entrepreneur.
Exactly.
So if she's the first customer plus the target, then that's
perfect.
That's perfect, right?
But the guy also makes a good point. The founder makes a good point. He said the town in which he lives, or the city or the small place where he grew up, was the perfect test bed for this, because they have even less access to the proper logistics and systems that they would have in Lagos, which is the capital.
That's why he started there.
Yeah. By the way, did you know that that's how you pronounce the capital?
Lagos, we say in French, but
yeah. But the guy that I know that lives in Lagos says Lagos.
Lagos.
In my head, I always pronounce it Lagos.
Lagos. Okay. So you would say it's a French way, Michael? Wow. Lagos.
I mean, bien sûr, of course, always.
But they can speak great English in Nigeria, right?
Yeah, I mean,
are they fluent in English? Like
fluent in English.
All the population?
I haven't met all of them, but I've met most of them, and I think most of them that I speak to are fluent in English.
Yeah.
And again, the guy that I know that there is diasporal, right? So he was, I believe, living in London or somewhere in the UK.
Okay.
And just said, opportunity's too big.
Okay.
And these stories are typical, right? Where you leave, let's just say, some other job in London. Maybe he was working in the city. I don't remember. I'm not talking about the founder of Alerzo. Yeah. I'm talking about another guy that I know there. But when he leaves his job, people are like, where are you going to go? I'm going back to Lagos. And they're like, oh my God, you're insane. And he's like, no, I'm not. The opportunity is gigantic. You're insane for not coming. And actually, I was listening to somebody else tell a story about this. Excuse me, a couple of days ago. It was actually the venture capitalist lady. She said she spent years, and she's not that old, right? So she's been working on this since she's quite young. She spent years trying to get people to come there to do a tour, an Africa tour, to show them around. And she said people would ask her, do I need to get vaccinated for this? And should we get bulletproof vests and all this other like silliness? And she was like, in the first few days that they were there, I'd call them and go, okay, I've organized a breakfast for everybody. And they were like, sorry, we already have plans. Because they'd already met new and interesting people. And they were already making like lunch plans, dinner plans, meeting in round tables. And she's like, okay, you're on your own. But once they got there, and this is why it's great that we covered these stories. Again, one of my whole goals about this is to just normalize the idea that just the stuff that's happening within 100 miles of you or 200 kilometers of you is not the only thing, is not the best thing, and should not be your sole platform to understand like what's happening in the rest of the world.
For sure.
Is that fair?
For sure. And actually, like that's very interesting that you say that, because I've been fortunate to travel a lot, like since the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years, thanks to my business and thanks to the fact that I operate that fully online. So that's pretty cool for traveling. And I think the one thing that shocked me the most is when I came to Thailand, because I was expecting to be like in developing countries. Right. And when we're here in Digital Park, we don't feel at all that we are in a developing country, right? And this is such a misunderstanding from the people who never come here or who never lived here. Some people see Thailand as a great place for holidays and, for vacation and stuff like that, but it's so much more than that. And what the press relay in France,
terrible,
and maybe more than that, what the people relay when they come back from holidays, they completely miss the point. And if you don't have the chance to travel and to go there and to live there for like a few months or a few years, then it's very hard, I think, to understand that and to understand this feeling that I have in Thailand, that I feel I am in a much more developed country than in France, to be fair.
Same here.
There's like so many stuff new here that we don't have in France. For example, like the mobile banking in Thailand is super, super developed, and we are years, like ages behind that in France, for example. So you cannot say just because it's Thailand, like you never heard about this country 10 years ago, that it's an underdeveloped country. That's not true. I think that's very important to have this open mind to what's happening, as you said, more than 200 kilometers away from your home.
When I first started traveling to Thailand in 1998,
okay,
which was my first time here. Oh my God, it's a long time ago, 23 years ago.
Yeah.
When I first started traveling here, I'd stay at this fancy hotel. Let's just say whatever it is. Yeah, I don't want to say. And I used to go back almost every year. So 3-4 years in, I was friends with the staff. They knew me. If I needed something, I could ask for it. It was very easy. And at some point, you just got tired of being on property. So we would ask them, where can we go for just like a typical lunch? We didn't know street food. We didn't understand that. And they said, just be careful.
Oh, really?
Don't eat off property because you're just going to get sick. This is what the staff said. Like, I mean, everybody's eating it. Look, we're not going to die, right? Went off property, found amazing like satay and just a whole bunch of great street food. You know, street food here is amazing.
For sure.
I think they were just afraid because on property, what you could buy for like 400 baht, you could buy off property for 40 or for 20 back then. Yeah. They were just like, Urgh.
Yeah, right. That's another thing.
but the more we came here on vacation, the more we understood what was happening here. And I want to say the same thing about Thailand that we're talking about now with Africa. And that is, the more you venture out, the less you think it's a developing country and the less you think it's dangerous. I remember the first time we got on the BTS. I'll never forget it. And I believe it was close to the Ramanai's birthday.
Okay.
Because everybody on the BTS was wearing a yellow shirt.
Okay.
But we didn't know that. And we didn't know why. And it just seemed really eerie. We're like,
everybody's yellow.
Everyone's wearing a yellow shirt. And we're like, did we get them? Yeah. Did we miss the memo kind of thing?
Is there something we missed?
We don't know this.
Yeah.
But again, you want to talk about developing versus develop. Once you got on the BTS and saw the Emporium and now today Central Embassy
it doesn't
and
feel like
Gaysorn, do you know what I mean? And now M. Quartier. This is a developing country kind of thing.
Yeah. Like there's still like huge differences between the people, right? In terms of richness and in terms of money that they're making. So maybe this way we can say that it's still developing countries. There's still a lot of people who are really, really poor and not making a lot of money and like all the jobs protection, let's say, or healthcare facilities like not like that developed in countries like France, for example. But yeah, there's some part of the country that are definitely not like what you can expect in a developing country. That's for sure.
I just mean that, like, you know, there's chaos inside. I mean, there's order inside what looks like a chaotic city.
Completely.
And I don't think Africa's really any different.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I really don't. I think if you go to Lagos, or I think if you go to, what's the name of the town where this guy started his company? I want to get it right.
I don't remember.
I do. Ibadan.
Ibadan, okay.
Which I'm probably mispronouncing. But the point is that if you go there, it's probably way safer than you expect. And I think that was the story that Maya, the VC lady, was telling, was that once she got people to come.
Yeah, it was different.
They arrived and they're like, this looks normal to me kind of thing. Right?
I'm definitely not surprised by that. Like, I definitely feel it can happen. And it can definitely like be the feeling that you have. But still, like after that, if you want to build companies, I think in e-commerce or in any other industries, it can take you years to really, really understand what's going on and how the process, what the culture and stuff like that. So it makes more sense as a VC firm to bet on the local company like Alerzo, for example. This guy's been there, he understands, he feels the problem of his mom. Like it made sense, right? And
perfectly.
And then you see the figures of the business, you see that it definitely works, then yeah, let's definitely do it, right?
Okay. Look, I just wanted to make sure. I think we both saw this story at separate times and said, we're talking about e-commerce, but we haven't spent any time up until now really talking about Africa. And I think that the more we do this, I think the more stories we're going to see coming out of Africa. We should definitely get guests from there.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, that's it for me this week. What else do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I just would like to add one thing, because with DrTech, I have some customers who are in Africa.
Did not know that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's why I know you don't know that. So.
Didn't know it.
So that's
but it makes sense in a way, right? We talked earlier about the relationship with France and stuff like that, right?
Of course, so and like all of my business is in French.
It's in French
for now, like, you know, like we've been promoted into some diaspora, some African diasporas in France.
Yep.
Because like what we are doing is great. It's super awesome. It's the best way to build your online store.
Is there anything even close?
No, nothing really. No. So like some people told about us into this diaspora in France, and then of course they have friends and families into their home country. So in the end, it happens that I have customers in Benin. How do you say in English? Benin. I would say Benin in French. I have no idea how to say that, but in French-speaking countries in Africa.
Right.
And what I see from my point of view, when I'm dealing with customer is, let's say, two things. First of all, they have a big issue with payment gateway.
Yep.
It's very hard for them to have access to that. So the two major ways they use for payments, the first one is cash on delivery, same in Thailand. Like they do the same thing, cash on delivery, which makes the logistics very important because that you need to trust and you need to work with the last mile delivery company or all of these kind of companies to be able to offer cash on delivery to your customer, right?
Yep.
So like there is, of course, some work to be done there because not every sellers wanna do cash on delivery because of this lack of trust to the delivery company. And so most of my customers ask me to include some payment gateway, some local African payment gateway. But it's funny because it's all mobile first.
All of it.
There is no Stripe. There is no PayPal. There is none of the one that we use in America or in Europe. It's only like, for example, like the major one that they asked me is Orange Money,
right?
Which is a French company that was there. It's actually a telecom company. So I think it's the one that everybody's using for his cell phone. And they also have an e-commerce payment gateway that people use for payments.
Is that M-Pesa?
Sorry?
M-Pesa?
What is M-Pesa?
That's the digital payments company that I was talking about at the beginning of the episode. Doesn't matter.
No, that's not this one. It's
okay.
Orange
Money.
Yeah.
Yep.
Orange is the telecom
phone company.
Phone company, definitely.
Yep.
So they provide internet access and stuff like that. And they also have a wallet thing where you can pay online and stuff like that. So they want to use that on their e-commerce store.
Right.
And that's interesting because like it's not something you can guess, you can know until you talk to these people and you can ask them like, what do you want? What's the process? How does it work into your country? And like how we can help you, right? And all of this stuff you just cannot guess and cannot just have information.
Look, we used to say this about operating in Southeast Asia. People would come here and just go, "What's too hard?
Yeah,
it's too complicated. Ugh, immigration, customs, languages, systems are all displaced. All this kind of stuff," and then they would leave because it's hard. But I do believe that part of success is about persistence.
For sure.
That when you hit hard things, you just keep going.
And you find solutions.
Some kind of solution.
Improving.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me when these big American companies like we're expanding, we're going international. Where do they go?
Europe, most of the time.
They just go to where other white people are who speak English.
UK.
Australia. We're going to New Zealand, the massive market of New Zealand. People in New Zealand, don't send me email.
Yeah. But like I tried to talk more with South African people and this African diaspora and all of this and all of these countries to develop my business there.
Of course.
Because for me it's all digital, so I can be in Thailand and I can have customers there. It's simple, right?
Yep.
But it looks like the market to have his own website was not that big like it is in Europe or in the US. It's like kind of like same Thailand. People want to do that, but they have issues with logistics, they have issues with payment.
They have other things to worry about.
Yeah, they have other things to worry about, so they just don't do that at the moment, right? But there's a lot of people into this region who want to sell in Europe or who want to sell into America.
Exactly.
Right? So, but
and they need a website.
And they need a website because in Europe, we buy on website, right?
Yep, same thing in the United States.
And same thing in the United States. So I was working also with them on how we can help them to set this up. And do you know what's the major problem that they have? That's interesting.
Payments
again, company
and logistics
and setting up a company.
And setting up a
because
company.
Most of the time they want to do that through a UK company or through a US company. But if you are a resident into Africa, it's much harder for you.
For sure.
To get access to these US-based services, let's say.
For sure.
It's really, really, really much harder for them. Unfortunately, because like the guy in Nigeria or in Benin is not like more stupid than you, is more, less educated. He should be able to have access to this.
Should be.
But there is some law, some process that really restrict these African people to do the same thing as what we do, basically, right?
Unbelievable.
And this is really unbelievable, but this is another step that needs to be overcome, right, for them when they want to do something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Doesn't make their life easier. But yeah, so this is what I see from my customers by dealing with them.
I love it.
And this is like some real life story. Like I don't like create that. It's not in the press. It's what I see.
Real world examples.
Yeah, of what I see from my customers who are there.
Through DrTech.
For DrTech, yeah.
So Martin, how can people reach you?
By email. That's the easiest. Martin@hello.dr.tech.
Hello.dr.tech.
DR for DrTech.
And if you like the show, AsiaTechPodcast.com, AsianFinTechPodcast.com, and AsiaInsureTechPodcast.com. Listen to the whole network. Thanks again, Martin.
Thank you very much, Michael. That was a great episode.
Awesome.
See you.